Okay. All
All right.
right.
And we're
Oh,
reporting.
yes.
Hi, everyone. We're,
Oh,
I'm at
okay.
a place, so you might hear dogs or uh, hear ruckus about ribs being smoked in the morning.
Okay. All
So,
right. So, all right. Well, this is the Green Corn Rebellion show. I'm Gregory Harden II, and we're here with my friend Misty Grady from
hi.
Arkansas. She is the best legal mind in the whole entire state of Arkansas. Um,
I don't know if I would go that far, but I'll go that far.
well, I'm gonna go that far. Um, let's see here. So today we are going to talk about get this hat right. We're going to talk about her senator, Tom Cotton,
Uh,
and how terrible he is, and how he is making his way through Republican Party politics and, you know, fucking shit up.
I, well, yeah. Tom Cotton is from Arkansas. If no one is aware, I currently have a dog in my lap, so was not expecting to do a podcast like this. um, so Tom Cotton is from Arkansas. For all of you that don't know, he is a veteran, so to speak. Whether or not he actually saw any combat, I don't think he did. Um, but he's popular in Arkansas because of that military experience. He's also very, he looks like the stereotypical, like, attractive man. He's not really, but like, he's got the shaven
Yeah.
face and he's really tall and skinny.
Hmm.
Um, I'm afraid like the media would love him if he ran for president.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Uh,
He's relatively young as well. I mean,
yes.
he's like
Yeah.
42 or 41, somewhere in there.
Yeah,
Which,
I
yeah.
haven't kept track of his age, but he's like 41. He's definitely got that presidential feel to him where
Mhm.
you know that people would describe him with that label if he were to run. Oh,
Yeah.
he's so presidential. He
Yeah.
doesn't he doesn't talk like Trump does. Like he doesn't
Yeah.
talk in the same brutally racist and sexist way,
Hmm.
but that's how he feels. Like he
Yeah.
uses prettier language.
Yeah.
You, and that's what the
And
danger lie where the danger really lies. We know Trump's a monster. We know
yeah.
that Trump is not to be trusted. We
Hmm.
know that Trump's a racist and a liar and a sexist.
Hmm.
But Tom Cotton's one of those guys that he says all the right things sometimes and
Yeah.
knows how to say it in a way that it dog whistles. So
Hmm.
people who aren't already racist or sexist don't hear what he's really saying. You know, I think there's a bigger danger in people like that than in outright bigots like people like Trump. Um, uh, you could make arguments that Trump's bigotry is more open and thus inspires more open bigotry, but
Hmm.
when you're not when you're not looking out for it, it's insidious. It creeps up without you realizing it. So uh, there's definitely a danger with Tom Cotton there.
Yeah.
He's very rabidly pro-war.
Oh,
Like
yes.
he wants to go to war with Iran. He
Yeah.
is very adamant about that on Twitter. I don't think he's ever seen a war he didn't like.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know,
I remember the first time I ever heard of Tom Cotton was around 2016, and this is when he was talking about how he thought that our prisons were undercrowded and how we needed to be putting more people in prison. And I was like, oh my God, this guy's a total psycho. Like, what? And then, yeah, and then I told my mom about him, and she was like, oh, I heard about this guy. He's the guy that got all those senators to sign the letter about the Iran deal or whatever back in, what was it, 2014, 2015.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, so this guy has leadership qualities clearly. So
Yeah.
he's a dangerous one to watch.
That is the real fear with Tom Cotton. And it's part of the reason that I feel very uh, uneasy about this presidential election, this cycle, because I'm worried that if we put the wrong Democrat in there and nothing changes, the working class, the poor of this country, the uneducated, and uneducated doesn't mean stupid. There's so many
Hmm.
people that act like it does, and it really bothers me because the smartest people I know don't have degrees.
Yeah,
It's just a fact. I know a lot of people, and people with degrees sometimes are just completely out of touch. They don't understand what's really going on in this country because they don't see it. They don't see it themselves. They don't live that life. And
yeah,
so, if we get the wrong person in there and nothing changes for those voters are the ones who switched from Obama to Trump in the first place. So I'm
yeah,
afraid that if we were to get the wrong Democrat in office, assuming we can even beat Trump in the first place,
yeah,
then we would be at risk of getting someone like Tom Cotton, who on the surface beats Trump out because he's not as openly bigoted. But like if you look at his words, it's there. It's
yeah.
there. In all of his plans and policies. Um,
Hmm.
and he has those leadership skills. He can get people on his side of the aisle to work with him and agree with him and lead these and spearhead these efforts. Like he is a demagogue just as much as Trump is. It's just a matter of what's more dangerous, an open demagogue or somebody who's going to stab you in the back.
Yeah,
Uh, so, like, I see a real danger from him because a lot of Republicans hate each other. You look at it and like everyone hates everyone hates uh everyone hates each other. Like John Boehner came out after he retired and was just like, I hate every single person in this party. And he
yeah,
dished them. He totally dished on them, like completely. It was hilarious to read it, but you know, when they can actually work together like that, and I haven't heard a single bad word from any Republican about Tom Cotton. That's also worrying to me.
yeah,
Because usually they have at least a little bit of shit talk on each other. Marco Rubio, versus Ted Cruz. There's got to be some back talking, but nothing bad about Tom. Not nothing.
yeah,
Um, so there's a real worry because he's young. He speaks in a manner that isn't demagogue or isn't too demagogue. I mean, not obviously, though he wants to throw more people in prison,
yeah,
which is easy to me. We should be we should be lowering the prison population by far. As a lawyer, I think that our system is already skewed against the poor. It's already skewed against especially the black population, the Latino population as well. You look at it, and it discriminates against class lines based on class for sure, but there's a lot of intersectionality there between race and class, and it definitely just destroys communities. Already the policies we have, if we were to increase that, I mean, who do you think they're going to be sending to prison?
yeah,
Uh, for the most part, it's going to be more black men. Poor white also do get the short end of the stick a lot of the times. Poor white women, we kind of get away with more than more than our counterparts, to be honest. Except in Oklahoma, don't you guys have the highest
Yeah.
population of female prisoners? Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep. In the country, I believe. Yeah.
yeah. That's a nice statistic to, you know, talk about sometime.
Yeah.
Uh, like usually women get better deals. I'm just gonna outright say that. We do usually get better deals, or we're seen as the victim. So we get white women. Let me just put it
Hmm.
that way.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
let's be um so I'm not saying that bad things don't happen to us, but you know, it's the reality of it. So he
Hmm.
wants to put more people in prison. Who do you think that's going to be? I mean, you know, he wants to put I'd be surprised if he weren't okay with putting all of Pine Bluff into prison. Like,
Hmm.
that's one of the largest. For those who don't know, Pine Bluff, Arkansas has a very large African American population, um, and it needs a lot of help, but the state completely ignores it,
Hmm.
and public defenders down there are severely underfunded, understaffed. I know a lot of lawyers that, when a job does open up in Pine Bluff, they're not willing to move there. They don't want to go there. They don't want to work there. And I know it's because of the racism.
Yeah.
It's like they won't say it usually outright to me, but the way that they talk about it, I know they're dog whistling. They don't
Hmm.
want to live in a city where, the majority are black. And like that contributes to the problem, because there's not enough good lawyers going down there willing to help defend people. And
Hmm.
even if you do get good lawyers down there, they're not paid enough and they're understaffed. So they really are just triaging for the most part,
Hmm.
trying to get the best plea deal they can for their client.
Yeah.
I think we've gone away from Tom Cotton a little bit here, but but yeah, Tom is someone that really concerns me just because he's charismatic to some extent. He's got a military background, so it's
Yeah.
going to be really hard for anyone to attack him without coming off as anti-veteran. I'm sure Trump would be able to do it, but
Yeah.
um, I'm sure if like a Democrat wins in 2020 and then in 2024 Trump decides to run again for some reason and Tom and him are facing off, I mean, I think that Tom would probably lose to Trump.
Yeah, probably.
But I mean, I think, but Tom definitely has what it takes to beat out Marco Rubio and Ted
Oh, for
Cruz,
sure.
especially because no one really knows who he is yet. I mean, yeah, he makes the news sometimes, but he's a senator from Arkansas. No one pays attention to Arkansas.
Yeah.
Another thing is, I think he might win an election because a lot of people will see an irony in electing another president from Arkansas, this
Hmm.
time a Republican.
Yeah.
Uh, which, I mean, I don't know. Arkansas is a small state. It doesn't offer a lot electorally,
Mhm.
but
Well,
it's definitely
that's kind of another appeal that he has because he's from the middle of the country. And
right from
yeah.
the heart. Yeah, that's uh, and um, he doesn't have any of the sexual scandals that some of these Republicans have. He doesn't have the sexual scandals that Bill Clinton had, for sure.
Yeah.
Uh, One thing is that, the left in Arkansas is quite clearly aware of who Tom Cotton is. Whenever the ACA was under siege and being threatened, you know, people came out to his town halls and we yelled at him and we screamed at him, and we went full hog, short of throwing things at him. Um, and we made it very clear we wanted him to keep the ACA and pre-existing conditions and how important they were to us. And he didn't really seem to care. I can't
Hmm.
remember if he actually supported pre-existing conditions. That would be something you have to look up. Sorry, guys, I don't know that right off the top of my head. I did at one point, but I did celebrate getting a new job yesterday. But I celebrate,
Hmm.
I had some fun last night, so little unclear on that. But, he was adamant before that town hall at the very least that we get rid of the ACA completely, and I'm pretty sure he voted to destroy it. Um, he doesn't care about poor people. He
Yeah.
doesn't care about the sick. He's very callous in that regard. Not as openly so as Trump. And I think my fear really is Trump has exposed the racism and the hatred in this country. He's
Hmm.
exposed the sexism. He's exposed all of it, all the ugliness. And I'm afraid that we are just going to walk right back into the closet and pretend, pull the wool over our eyes and pretend that if a Democrat wins, it's all solved. We fixed racism, guys. It's
Yeah.
gone. We
Just like
elected a Democrat.
yeah, just
Look.
like yeah, just like when we had Obama as president for 8 years, there was no racism at all, and it was a
Oh no.
post-racist America. And then Trump just came out of nowhere and brought all this racism.
I mean, it's not like people were burning Obama in effigy. Oh wait, they were.
They were.
Uh, it's not like they were hanging a doll of Obama from a noose. Oh wait,
They were.
yeah, they were. It's so. I feel like a lot of the Democrats, when Obama was president, we didn't critique him like we should have for some of his decisions. I will just say that he was the best president I've had in my life. That's not
Yeah.
saying much. I've had Clinton, Bush, Obama, and Trump.
Yeah.
So who do you
Yeah.
think's the best one?
Yeah.
Obviously Obama.
Yeah.
But we let him do things that I don't think we should have let him do. We
Mm.
didn't critique him. And then we acted like racism was over because of him. And
And some
we
of the
were
most racist things in at least our lifetimes happened while he was president. Like, Ferguson happened and all the different police shootings that were happening and Trayvon Martin. Like, that was all
yeah,
happened under Obama. Yeah.
right. I mean, listen, I'm gonna plug a musician I like, David Rovix. He
Mhm.
has a song called "Democrats Make Me Vomit," and like he's a socialist. He's a
Mhm.
socialist. He's very left leaning, but you know, his songs are basically a critique on the Democratic Party to a large extent, and I feel like we need to be evaluating uh, the things in the party that are going wrong, our blind spots.
Yeah.
We can't just pretend our side is perfect. That's what Trump's side does. They're tribalistic to a mad degree. And I'm
Hmm.
afraid that Democrats have become the same way or are at risk of becoming the same way, where it's my side is always right. My side is always right. And our
Hmm.
side is always right.
Yeah.
Sometimes we put in power make the wrong decisions. And if we're not calling them out, then the other side is.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah. Like, I remember last year on Facebook, I was saying some stuff about Pelosi and I was saying about how racist she is and stuff like that, and people were like, "No, you're just being sexist. You're wrong." And I'm like, "Okay, we'll wait and see." And now, no one can find a nice word to say about her anymore. I'm just like, "Hey, well,
that's good that there's been progress made. But like, I remember trying to compare records of two of these presidential candidates, and one of them, is a black woman, and the other one was a Jewish man,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
I was all but called a racist and a sexist time. And I was like, oh, okay. Oh, I don't think that, I mean, you remember how I supported Obama, right? But then that sounds like I have a black friend argument. So,
Mhm.
you're placed into the corner when they start accusing you of that. You're like, I can't do anything except say I think you're wrong, but like
Yeah.
everything I say in my defense makes it sound like I am,
Mm-hmm.
So because it's stuff that the right has come to use, and they've appropriated all of those defenses. So
Yeah.
whenever you defend yourself against those accusations, all you sound like is like
Mm-hmm.
conservative, and so
Yeah.
it just becomes a firing circle almost.
Mm-hmm.
I think identity is extremely important. I think it needs to be represented, but you have to make sure that those people are representing your values as well.
Yeah.
And if you have to call them out, you have to hold them accountable. They're not going to hold themselves accountable. That has never happened with anyone in power ever.
Yeah.
Like, even I'm not, even I understand I support Bernie Sanders and I've called him out, I donated to him, and every time I donate, I offer a little critique at the donation because he asks for comments. And
Mm-hmm.
the reparations thing, I was like, you're being like, I get where you're coming from, but you're not being clear enough on this. You need to get better
Yeah.
on this topic. You need to address it in a better way. And then he did. He did.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You know, when politicians get called out, if they're not responsive to you, then you need to kick them out. But if they actually respond to your criticisms and they seem to understand that they were wrong, like,
Mm-hmm.
that's good. That's
Yeah.
objectively good. But if you don't call them out, how are they going to know they're wrong?
Exactly.
It's just so I fear that the Democratic Party is at risk of becoming super tribalistic, just like the Republican Party, where, we'll vote for the anti-choice Democrat over a pro legalization of marijuana, pro choice Republican, you
Mm-hmm.
know, um, which interestingly, Kamala Harris, I won't go
Yeah.
into it too much, she ran on a platform as AG of anti marijuana legalization, and her Republican opponent did run on a pro legalization
Yeah.
platform.
And then she laughed at it whenever she was asked about it when the election happened. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just like you have to be looking at the issues these people are espousing, and if you're not, then what's the point of voting for them if you don't know what they
Exactly.
stand? Uh, like in Arkansas, let me just talk real quickly about our Senate race. Tom Cotton has two challengers. He's
Mm-hmm.
got a Democrat who ran for Congress in 2018 and lost Fayetteville, NWA, the most liberal part of the state,
Yeah.
to Congressman Womack, who is he hasn't done anything useful in years. He's a waste of space. I hate to say it, like Womack doesn't even visit his constituents. He doesn't even hold town halls from what I remember. You know,
Wow.
so Mahoney, this guy Joshua Mahoney, lost this
Mm-hmm.
congressional race, and now he's running against Tom Cotton in a statewide race, and I'm just like, okay, so what are your issues? Let me see your platform. And I looked at his website, and just like last time, there's not a single issue on there beyond generalities like affordable health care, and
Mm-hmm.
you can run on that and win. Not even, not even in Arkansas. You can't just run on generalities. You have to
Yeah.
accountable. You have to
Mm-hmm.
get unlikely voters out because there are a lot of voters that don't show up. The majority of our state's not voting when we go to these elections. You know, um, if you could get unlikely voters to come out, maybe you could turn the state blue. But without them, you're not.
Yeah.
You're just not. Because the Republicans are going to come out in full force every single time, and they're going to vote for the Republican.
Mm-hmm.
um, and then there's also this guy, a progressive independent, and his
Mm-hmm.
name is Daniel Whitfield.
Yeah.
Um, he's got an amazing platform. I looked at his page, and a part of me wishes he was running as a Democrat because then at least there would be a primary, and maybe he would win the primary because he actually is open about supporting Medicare for all. But he's also pro gun rights.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want to do a buyback program. He thinks that's wrong. He also doesn't want to take guns from people. And in Arkansas, if you're not at least running that, you're dead in the water. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I hate it, but like, I'm more willing to compromise on guns than I am abortion. And you're gonna have to compromise on one if you expect to win in Arkansas.
Yeah.
Um,
That way
so
here in Oklahoma too.
exactly.
Yeah.
And he has also got a platform that says, you know, I have my issues that I'm not willing to compromise on, but for everything else, I'm going to be putting up a vote on a website. And if more than 30% of residents of Arkansas vote for something or vote against it, I'm going to vote that way. So like
Hmm.
he's doing this kind of revolutionary platform, I feel like.
Yeah.
Uh, which if he were running as a Democrat, I feel like he would get all the Democratic votes if they looked into him.
Hmm.
Um, but the risk with that is that things are so tribalistic here. I I don't think a Democrat really has a shot, not a single chance at winning the state election.
Hmm.
So if Mahoney wasn't running, I mean, I've looked through the voting history of Arkansas, and independents usually get a decent chunk of the vote, um, just because there's a lot of people that don't like Republicans or Democrats here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them, like a ton. You can go on to the comment sites and you'll find the comment section, and you'll find just a bunch of people that hate Republicans and Democrats. Um, but there's a real risk that these two will split the vote,
Hmm.
and they might together get more of the vote than Tom Cotton. But that's the fear when you're running two candidates. Of
Yeah.
course, Bernie Sanders also ran against a Democrat and a Republican, and
Yeah.
eventually he won. But in this race is really important. We need to take as many Senate seats as possible.
Oh yeah.
So um, I do think that Mahoney, if he were running alone and Whitfield wasn't running, Mahoney would still lose because he's not inspiring. He's
Yeah.
not going to bring out unlikely voters. No one knows what his platform is. He speaks
Hmm.
in generalities and says, I'm not Tom Cotton. Like the left in Arkansas hate Tom Cotton, but they're not who you need to convince. The right in Arkansas loves him.
Hmm.
They don't see a single thing wrong with him, except for the ones that were concerned about their health care.
Yeah.
There's the, but you're not going to get to those voters with
Yeah.
affordable health care. You've got to go a stronger path. So I think that if it were just the independent running against Tom, we would have a shot at getting a really progressive voice in the Senate, because all the Democrats would vote for him. And then you'd get the people who always vote independent or libertarian to vote for him as well. And then you could get some angry Republicans to vote for him. You might eke out a victory with that, but
Yeah.
you're not going to do it if there's vote splitting between Mahoney and Whitfield. So I'm kind of concerned about that. I think Mahoney's going to lose no matter what. But I mean, be
Yeah.
a better candidate, dude.
Yeah.
um, have some solid beliefs and policies on your page. But um, so I think Tom is going to be around for a while. I'm supporting Daniel Whitfield in the race because he represents all of my values, really. And I'm personally more pro-gun than anti-gun myself.
Yeah.
I did grow up in Oklahoma and Arkansas and Kansas. Um, it, I think that community defense is important. Self-defense is important.
Hmm.
I think that if all communities had some sort of community defense system, we wouldn't have as much police violence. We wouldn't have as much trouble with our prison population because all of these things would be solved within the community without it escalating.
Yeah.
Um, and a community member is much less likely to shoot someone who's acting up than a police officer. You
Yeah.
know, um, but I mean, just because they know that person, they've
Hmm.
been around that person, they know that person doesn't deserve to die.
Yeah.
Uh, but I really think that Democrats should back off guns, but they're not going to do that. So I'm kind of like the lone voice on the liberal side. Well, I'm a leftist.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm kind of the lone voice on the left right now, but there are other leftists like me.
Yeah.
Uh,
There's the
we just,
Socialist Rifle Association, and there's
yes,
Redneck Revolt, and people like that. Yeah.
Redneck Revolt is amazing, and they do have a presence in Northwest Arkansas, which I find very comforting. I think that's important. Uh, if anybody knows, like we have Red Dirt Defense and a Redneck Revolt, and they basically go to like pride parades or to liberal events, and they're just there in case something happens, to be
Hmm.
like emergency responders. Um,
Yeah.
and they're there in case like Nazis show up or Proud Boys show up, to try to
Mhm.
cause trouble. And I think that reassures people. I know I was reassured when I went to my last Pride Parade and saw the Red Dirt Defense there. Uh, Went up and hugged them. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely groups on the left that are more willing to be uh, defenders, like to actually put their money where their mouth is and actually
Yeah.
be ready to fight if they have to. Um, and of course, we try to avoid violence at all costs, but sometimes you have to defend yourself.
Hmm.
Um, and I think taking away the guns is just a bad idea all around. It's going to piss off every single conservative in the country, and it's also going to make the leftists really worried. Like,
Hmm.
like guns, the working class should always be armed. It's just my opinion. I know
Hmm.
it's a lot more difficult for minority communities. It's one thing to say that.
Yeah.
It's one thing to say that I think that minority communities should have self-defense and community protection. But in practice, an officer sees you with a gun,
Yeah.
where I'm going.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons the assault rifle ban got passed is because the Black Panthers were going around with
Yeah. They scared
ARs.
they scared the
Just
shit out of Ronald Reagan.
exactly.
Yeah.
So those gun laws will, if they pass, they will affect people of color more than they will affect white people, because white people know, like, they have the resources to hide their guns. They have the
Yeah.
resources to, get out of trouble if they get found with it. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, I have a thing I say like the 13th Amendment was made for us, right? Because, they had to free the slaves and all that. I say that the first 12 amendments don't apply for black people, just the ones after the 13th Amendment. Because that's the way
yeah,
it kind of sounds like. Yeah.
they
But
kind of
yeah.
feel that sometimes.
Yeah.
I've had clients that are obviously being targeted. It could just be because they've got, they're driving and the cop looks up their license or recognizes the car and they're like, oh, this is a guy that I've arrested before. Or they're looking at his criminal history and they're going, well, he's got to be up to something, but he's Latino. And, I think that's really what's playing the role of it all. He gets targeted a lot. And, um, part of me taking a public interest job, like, you know, I know I can't, I know I have to leave some of my clients behind, and I wonder, I know this is what's best for me, and like, I just wonder, you know, who is he gonna go to for a lawyer next? Because I,
Hmm.
really went to bat for him and got some charges dropped, and he isn't exactly rich. So who's he gonna go to whenever he gets pulled over again for some
Yeah.
trumped up charge? Uh, like, they get targeted. I've seen it. My minority clients have all faced ridiculous shit.
Hmm.
Um, Compared to my white, and I'm not saying my white clients haven't. You know, there is at least one white client I feel like Um, she shouldn't have been arrested, and I got the charges dropped because it was ridiculous. But I mean, it mostly impacts Latinos or Black people, and it's always going to, I feel like, unless we really do something about it.
Yeah.
Um, and the only thing we can do, is kind of clean house with the police department.
Yeah.
Hate to say it, but whatever they're doing, they're hiring people that have groupthink, that become kind of tribalistic themselves. Even the good ones, they don't speak up when they know that the bad ones are doing something wrong,
Yeah.
and that makes them that makes them bad by extension. I
Mhm.
I really feel that. You can be a great person, you can not discriminate yourself, but the second you allow somebody to do it, and you don't speak up, and you
Mhm.
just let it happen, you're guilty, you're complicit.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, with law enforcement in Arkansas, it's a losing battle because everyone believes cops here. You know, I I mean, I saw a client of, not my client, I was just watching the case, sitting second chair. And the jury found this client guilty, but they obviously didn't believe she was guilty. They were obviously unsure. They had reasonable doubt there because when they sentenced her, they only gave her a fine, and this was
Mhm.
for a felony where she could have gone to prison for like over 10 years.
Mhm.
So instead of sending her to prison or giving her even a suspended sentence, they just gave her a fine. So obviously, some backroom deal was made with the jury. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, somebody was like, I don't think she's guilty, and I'm going to keep us here all day. And then somebody was like, well, what if we just give her a fine? Something like that obviously happened. Uh, and the police, testified, and I think they convinced most of the jury that she was guilty, and I still believe she was innocent to this day. She was a victim. She wasn't a criminal. I can't go into too much more detail than that, but our justice system is kind of messed up, and it's constant struggle against that as an attorney working for low income clients, and minority clients. Um, and I mean, I try to use whatever white privilege I might have as often as possible to their benefit. But, then I'm still a woman. So I do still receive sexism. I still do experience it myself. Um, and really, it's hard to change that kind of culture. Um, it's a struggle. And if anyone wants to believe sexism is over or racism is over just because if we win in 2020, I don't want to hear that shit. I don't want to hear, well, we won. It's all over. Oh, things are always going to be good from now on. Like if Joe Biden wins the election,
Oh
like,
God.
yeah, you can't tell me racism and sexism don't exist if Joe Biden wins the election. Don't try to come in
Yeah.
my that shit. Um,
Yeah.
uh, he recently kissed his granddaughter on the mouth,
Yeah.
and amidst all of the allegations of sexism and like touching women inappropriately, that's what he
Mhm.
chooses to do. My
Yeah.
grandpa would have never, never done that. Um, like, and my grandpa wasn't even the most forward-thinking man in the world, but he would never have kissed me on the mouth. Jesus. Like, what he did to black people with the crime bill, we're still feeling the repercussions of that. And honestly,
Yeah.
I hate to say this. I hate to say this. Trump's more liberal on crime policy than
Mhm.
Joe Biden is.
Oh,
If
clearly. I mean,
Yeah, like he
yeah.
passed. he signed that bill into law, which it clearly it actually helps uh people in prison. I mean, that's something Joe Biden never did.
Nope.
It's not even it's something Obama sure never did. Like,
Hmm.
as much as I respect Obama, and as much as I hate Trump, you have to admit when someone does something right. Otherwise, you look like a hypocrite, and you
Yeah.
look like a liar, and you look like you don't care about reality.
Hmm.
Um, so like that's what I'm seeing a lot from the party, and that's what I think um, we have to really work on ourselves. Um, I know it seems like there's a lot of infighting now within the party, and there is,
Oh yeah.
uh, but it's healthy. I think that's healthy to
I
have
think
that.
it's healthy. I'd
Yeah,
rather we at least, have those conversations now and throughout the primary and even after the primary because, nothing's going to be perfect. I hate it when people tell me, oh, well, you shouldn't be saying that about X candidate because if they're the nominee, we're going to have to vote for them. I'm like, sure, we might, but, I still
like,
want to criticize them when they're wrong too because,
right. Um,
exactly.
exactly. And like, I do understand that this is a really important election and that we're probably going to have to vote blue no matter who, at least if we actually give a damn about people that are struggling.
Yeah.
Uh, but I also think that there's a risk when we tell people, you have to vote blue no matter who, that you're going to push people away because
Yeah.
people are individuals, people they don't owe their vote to you. Some of these
Mhm.
people are independent. Some of these people have never identified as Democrats before in their life, and you're
Yeah.
telling them, you have to vote how we want.
Yeah.
Uh, and some of these people just have they're single issue voters or something like that. Um,
Mhm.
you're driving people away when you say things like that. But I also think you're not driving people away when you're having these discussions. Like, is centrism better than leftism? What direction should our party move in, left or right? You know,
Mhm.
um, that's good. It's good to have those conversations, but we shouldn't be demanding things of people,
Yeah.
especially voters or unlikely voters.
Mhm.
I, I think that drives people away from the process.
Yeah.
Um, and we need to be encouraging them instead. Um, also, I mean, I just want to point out that Arkansas isn't as lost as people might think it is. We passed, we have ballot initiatives here, and it's shocking to me, at least it was at first, that we passed medicinal marijuana in 2016.
Mhm.
Uh, I was actually predicting in 2014, right before I came to law school, that marijuana would be legal in Arkansas in 10 years. And I was told, no, that's crazy. It'll be the last state in the union to do it. It's got a ballot initiative process. I
Mhm.
think we can do this. And so in 2016, we did. And then after that, we passed a minimum wage increase,
Mhm.
to $11 an hour in like a few years. So that's not $15 an hour. That's not enough. But like when given the option, Arkansas votes for issues that are considered liberal, and they vote
Mhm.
in favor of them.
Yeah, Oklahoma's like that too. Because I remember 2016 was the first year I ever voted. And what was it? We had like 6 or 7 different ballot initiatives. Um, two of them had to do with criminal justice reform. I can't remember any of the other ones off the top of my head right now, but most of them, all of them except for like one of them, went on the liberal side of things, and I was like, "Whoa, I wasn't expecting that," but okay, I'll take it. And
Well,
then, yeah,
it's interesting because like it's economic. Medical marijuana is an economic issue as much as it is a social issue.
hmm
Um, and so is minimum wage. Like there's populist tendencies in Arkansas and in Oklahoma. In fact, when I was an undergrad, I did a research project on northeastern Oklahoma, and I found out it's not really Democrat or Republican. It's heavily populist, which means that they have an us versus them mentality, which isn't necessarily bad, and it can be controlled, but it also can be very dangerous. But that us versus them mentality can be pointed in two directions. It can be pointed at people that are different than you based on some sort of superficial characteristic like skin color.
Mm-hmm.
Or it can be pointed towards people who are actually in power, like the elites. It can be pointed towards the rich. It can be pointed towards the powerful. And so Oklahoma, obviously Oklahoma went for Bernie Sanders in the
Yep.
primary last time, which shows that my research was correct. Oklahoma is populist. They
Mm-hmm.
like Trump. They voted for Trump. They voted for Bernie. Like, populism is winning in Arkansas and Oklahoma. I know Arkansas went for Clinton last time, but you have to remember that it was already after Bernie had lost. Like, he couldn't have possibly won.
Yeah.
We had our primary so late in the season that, no one I knew showed up to vote for Bernie or Clinton. So there were a lot of people that just didn't bother showing up to vote in the primary, or they voted on the Republican ticket because you can vote however you want in the primary here. And, some people make that strategic decision when they know that it's useless on the Democratic ticket
Mm-hmm.
to vote for the least terrible Republican they can.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know a lot of people that didn't come out and vote, and I think that contributed to Clinton winning Arkansas. I think it would have either been a lot closer or he would have won if it had been earlier in the primary season. And we moved up to Super Tuesday now. So now
Oh,
we have,
really?
yeah, now we're going to have a voice. Now I'm going to see if my theory is correct about Arkansas, which Arkansas and Oklahoma,
Mm-hmm.
you look at the data, um, Bernie Sanders has the most donations from Arkansas and Oklahoma out of
Yep.
all the other candidates combined, and that's huge. I think that shows the direction that that states are going in. The red states aren't lost, but
Yep.
you have to come to them with this economic populist message. You
Mm-hmm.
can't come to them with, I know social issues are extremely important, but you have to realize that most of the people in Oklahoma and Arkansas are white,
Mm-hmm.
and they're a little
Especially
racist.
especially out in the rural areas, like um people, like young people, they usually leave the rural areas to go to Oklahoma City or Tulsa or somewhere like that because there's
Right.
no opportunity. Yeah, because there's no opportunity out in the rural areas. Yeah,
Exactly.
so yeah.
And so when you're thinking about it, it's not necessarily even that, because I'm not going to sit here and say that there aren't a large amount of people in Oklahoma and Arkansas that are racist. There are a lot of racists in these states, but
Hmm.
you've also got people that they have other issues to worry about. They're
Yeah.
they're concerned with surviving themselves. And when you're
Hmm.
concerned with surviving yourselves, you don't have much brain power or bandwidth left to care about other people.
Yeah.
When you're living in poverty or your life sucks and you can't figure out why, I mean, you know, if somebody's telling you it's because of these people over here,
Hmm.
and they're not saying, oh, well, it's these people over here who have all the money, you're only giving them the one option to blame.
Yeah.
And, when people don't have bandwidth mentally, they're going to make bad decisions. I can't say that I'm not forgiving them or excusing them for it, but like they just don't have the mental bandwidth to consider what's happening to Black people or brown people in the country because
Hmm.
they're so busy worried about themselves. And
Hmm.
but an economically populist message that says, "Hey, we realize you've been forgotten too," because the Republicans don't give a shit about you. They
Hmm.
say they do, but they don't because your
Yeah.
life is bad. You can't make rent. You've got to go without food. Your mother can't find a nursing facility because it takes $300 a day to pay. You
Or
know,
your hospital just closed down and you have to travel an hour or two to get to a hospital. Yeah.
exactly. So, when you're ignoring those white people, they become very dangerous because, you know, people need to eat. And
Mm.
I'm not saying that things are even worse for black and brown people, obviously. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
it just the statistics bear that out.
Hmm.
But like when you're in a majority, they don't see that.
Yeah.
They don't know enough they don't know enough um yeah, they don't know enough black people
About the
or brown people.
world. Yeah. They don't know enough about the world outside of what they already know.
Right, because they've
Yeah.
never had the money to travel. You
Mhm.
know, they don't have. I went to Europe whenever I was in high school. I saw so much, and that impacted me in a way. Travel really does, but that also was a sign of how well off I was economically at the time compared to everyone else around me. I got an opportunity that expanded my mind. They don't get that. They don't
No.
get those opportunities. They're lucky if they get to the city, you know?
Hmm.
Um, and, it's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous sometimes.
Hmm.
Um, so like those white people, you have to reach them and you're going to have to reach them with economic populism. There's really no other way. You can't They don't have the bandwidth for empathy, okay? I don't know how long I've talked to these people. Uh, they don't have it. They just can't. Study after study shows that if you're living in poverty, it's really, really hard for you to like to think like that. It's hard for you to think much beyond where your next meal's coming from.
Yeah.
Uh, and poverty also has an impact on IQ. I hate to say that, but it does.
Yeah.
And it's not permanent impact. It can change. If
Hmm.
your circumstances change, um, you can see a boost in your IQ simply from not being stressed out or concerned all the time or starving. Your brain needs food and it needs security to actually work. So, when people want to ignore white people's issues, I I get it. I get it.
Hmm.
There are there are people out there that have it a lot worse, but
Yeah.
they don't get it. And you need to reach those white people because they're voting. They're
Yeah.
voting, and you need to convince them to vote for your side.
Hmm.
Um, and you can't always see them as the enemy. Now,
Yeah.
there are a lot of people that are just outright never going to change.
Yeah.
Never. And they're never going to vote for our candidate. Um, but there are a lot of people that I think aren't intentionally racist or sexist or insert whatever phrase regarding bigotry you
Hmm.
need. It's just they can't see beyond their own problems and they don't want they want people to pay attention to them. And I get that.
Hmm.
Um, but you also can't spend all your time focusing on them.
Yeah.
Be- you know, they're not the backbone of the party. They're not the backbone of the party at all. That's black people. That's black women. You know,
Hmm.
those are our consistent voters. So we have to make sure that we're not leaving them behind. But they also need that economic message.
Yeah.
They're
Like
worse
like in
than
my
any.
like in my what was it? My tweet. Remember, have you seen
Yeah,
my tweet that went viral apparently this week?
yes,
The
about
one.
your mom.
Yes, like I just tweeted it out. I wasn't even thinking anyone was gonna retweet it or anything, and now it has like over 700 retweets, and I'm like, oh, okay. But no, but like it proves the point of what we're talking about. Like my mom, she's black. voted Democrat her entire life, been a Democrat her entire life. Her issue was not, getting a black woman in office or even getting a black man in office. I mean, she did vote for Obama, but it wasn't because
Right.
of him being black. She believed in what he was talking about. Whenever he ran in 2008, he was talking about healthcare. He was talking about the banks. He was talking about all that stuff, ending the wars and stuff like that. I remember that as a 10-year-old back in 2008. But yeah, but like
Get
black
you're
people,
younger than me. Holy shit! I was just 1 year. I was too late to vote in 2008. I was a little bit too young.
yeah, I was too. But yeah, but yeah, those like things like Medicare for all, $15 minimum wage, they're things that white people need as well, and black people need them, and um, but yeah, like that, those things are what I feel like need to be at the center of what Democrats are running on. Because to
Right.
me,
I mean,
because to me, by default of not having an economic populist message, to me, they are leaving black people behind and people of color behind because we're the
they are.
ones that really need that agenda as well.
Yeah.
And people in the media want to act like for some reason black people, we're so disadvantaged, but we don't need a progressive agenda at the same time, which is like, that doesn't add up, but okay, you do you, boo boo.
Like,
But yeah,
I know that there are like the polls, if you want to believe them, which I don't because they were so wrong last time. And also, if you look at the methodologies of it, you've got polls out there that don't poll anyone under 50. You've got polls out there that don't poll anyone that's making less than 100K. Of
100K,
course,
yeah, exactly. Like
the
I made a joke one time. I said I don't believe any poll that doesn't directly call me and ask my opinion because it's
right.
like you're
Never
not
been.
talking. Yeah, like you're not getting anyone that I know or anyone that would be in any kind of demographic that I know. You're not asking their opinion because if you ask their opinion, I'm pretty sure you'd have radically different polls if, you
Right.
ask,
And
yeah.
also, you look at some of these, sometimes you can find the methodology and sometimes you can't, but sometimes you can find the questions that were
Mhm.
asked. And,
The questions are
these
misleading. Yeah.
misleading, biased, like the Medicare for All polls, they wouldn't tell you that you could keep your doctor. They were just talking about private insurance being gone. And people changed their opinions on it because
Yeah.
they found out that private insurance would be destroyed. But then you finally poll them and you say, what if you get to keep your doctor? And
Hmm.
suddenly support
Yeah.
goes up 55, 56%. 56% of independents are like, hell yeah, Medicare for all sounds great under those circumstances.
Yeah.
But
There was a
Jen,
poll. There was a poll. I didn't go find this poll, but they talked about it on the Majority Report a couple of weeks ago. It ran down the different things that Medicare for All would do, and it asked, what was it? It asked Democrats, Independents, and Republicans if they knew Medicare for All would do these things. And somehow Democrats didn't know anything, Independents knew more, and then Republicans knew the most about what Medicare for All would do. And I was like,
everyone
literally, like, no one knows what Medicare for All is about. Like, it was the weirdest
except
poll
the other
ever,
side and the
right?
independents, like,
Yes.
you
Like,
know,
I was like, this is insane. Like, oh my God.
I just briefly recap for anyone that might watch this podcast. Medicare for All, I'm sure people that are woke enough to be watching this already know, but Medicare for All would be implemented slowly over 4 years. It would first expand to cover literally everything, including dental, long-term care, and vision. And then it would apply to everybody who's already on Medicare. So they could get rid of their private insurance right away. And then it would apply to everyone under 18 so we could consolidate all the Medicaid programs for children across the country. And then it would slowly drop down over time for the age. And it would be a slow process. And it would give insurance companies time to wrap up all their business. And it would give them, you wouldn't be firing every employee right away. from that industry. It also gives 1% of the budget for securing retirement and pension plans, unemployment checks, and job training. You would also get first crack at any new job in the Medicare for All administration. So, like for those employees that lose their jobs, and that would go for 5 years after the employee lost their job. So, it would be pretty great for these employees. No one would get hurt by losing their job. Also, it would cap your medication costs at $200 a year if you were making like 25K as an individual or 56K as a family. And it would be free for anyone making less than that. And so, like, how can you oppose that? That's great. I mean, if you actually read the bill, it's 100 pages long. The ACA was like 3,000. You
Yeah.
can read this bill. It takes a little bit of time. It's easy for a layperson to understand, and I say that as a lawyer. You can read it easy. It explains everything. Like, it's very well thought out. And Republicans and independents knowing more about it is by design, because our media, our liberal media doesn't
Yeah.
want us to understand it. They don't want us to understand it. Republican media thinks that Republicans will hate it, so they tell the truth about it.
Yeah.
Like, but Democratic media, they don't want us to love it because that'll hurt the people that are funding them, and they know that we're more likely to love it because they know their base. So they do a great disinformation campaign against it. Pelosi doesn't want us to understand Medicare for all. Joe Biden sure as hell doesn't,
Yeah.
because his ego's getting in the way.
Mhm.
He sees the ACA as like one of his crown achievements, even though it wasn't his achievement at all. It was a Republican bill. It
Yep.
was Barack
Romney
Obama
care.
passed, and it was
Yeah.
Obama that got it passed, not Biden. Biden
Yeah.
was the VP. He
Yeah.
doesn't do shit except open his. Like, I'm sorry, he never broke a single vote in Congress. He was like, he wasn't needed. So, and that's as a VP, because as VP, that's like your one and only job when there's a tie to
Yep.
break it.
Mhm.
Like, he never even got to do that. So, like, but his ego's getting in the way. He feels that it's the crowning achievement of his administration, so he's going to defend it, even if it means lying about what Medicare for All does.
Yeah.
And Obama, back in 2003, he was a big supporter of single-payer healthcare. That's one reason I wanted him to win so badly in 2008, even though I couldn't vote. My mother had died when I was 14, and so she didn't have insurance. The doctor came to me and my grandparents, and they sat down and they said, we can treat this like charity and forgive everything we've done for her so far, and you won't have to pay anything. Or we can keep trying to treat her, and you'll be liable for everything that we have incurred until this point. And then, they quoted some number at us, and, my mom's life wasn't worth that number. My grandparents didn't have that money. I didn't have that money, and so, she died. And I heard that Barack Obama wanted single payer healthcare. And, I was over the moon. I thought, finally,
Yeah.
no one is going to have to experience what I experienced. Having a doctor sit down with a 14-year-old girl and say, hey, is your mom worth this much money? Because
So
if
off.
not, she's going to die. And I was like, then he didn't. He didn't fight for it like he should have. I made a lot of excuses for him.
Mhm.
The Republicans, it was them, but he had the majority.
Yeah.
It was the Democrats that stopped it. It was
Mhm.
the Democrats that kept the public option from happening. That
More
was
specifically, the Blue Dog Democrats, who
yeah,
have come back in full force since the 2018 election, sadly.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And so it's it's like you can't rewrite history. I remember what happened. I was making excuses back then, but after a certain point, it became exhausting to make excuses for his administration on foreign policy and stuff like that.
Oh
Um,
God, foreign
but then
policy under Obama was horrible.
oh yeah, oh well, and I defended him a lot, and I still do to a large extent because he wasn't all bad.
Yeah.
Um, he wasn't. I don't think he went in there with evil intentions, and
No.
I know that I'm gonna have to defend him from racists for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Thing, I felt like I had to defend him, even though I disagreed with him on a lot of things because there was
Mhm.
just so much racism and hatred against him based on
Oh
his skin
yeah.
color and on these
And
lies about where he was
and
born.
I remember when I was in middle school and high school when he was president, and what was it? People would blame Michelle Obama for our school lunches being bad. And I had
Right.
to, yeah, and I was like, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever fucking heard. Like, she doesn't have direct control over our school lunches, you guys. Like,
Right.
I don't know who told you this, but it's just not. And I remember having to tell people that all the time. I was like, no, like, leave that lady alone.
Like, leave her alone. Yeah. I mean, honestly,
People would literally come to me and say, like, you wanted them to win. Like, what do you have to say about our lunches and what she's doing to our lunches? I'm like, I like why are you coming to me with this?
like, wait
It
a
was
minute.
insane.
It's only because I'm black. Oh, I remember in high school, um, geez, in high school, whenever Obama was first elected, I remember this white popular boy, he was joking,
Hmm.
and he said, "It's time to go coon hunting in the White House."
Oh
And
wow.
I was like, "Holy shit, dude! Do you want me to call the Secret Service? Because I will the next time I hear that shit out of your mouth." And I like yelled at him in front of the entire class. I was a crazy liberal even then, and all of my classmates, like looking back, I thought they were just being mean to me. But now
Hmm.
looking back, I'm like, they were all terrified of me. They were like, this girl
Hmm.
is crazy. Like,
Yes.
because I would frequently like just tell people what was on my mind, and they had never heard that kind of argument before in their lives.
Hmm.
And so it was like, why is she always telling us we're wrong? Why is she always calling us a racist? I don't understand. Like, they legitimately didn't, because we had like one black kid in school, and he identified as half Native American instead of black. Just to
Yeah.
just to try to get less of a racist reaction against him, I guess. I
Yeah.
don't know. Um, and
That's crazy.
so, yeah, like, people don't know what they're saying sometimes.
I know,
But
because it's funny because I know a lot of people, like when we were back in middle school and high school, like I guess for them their political opinions were just based upon what their parents thought. So
yeah,
they would come to me with their crazy thoughts about Obama or whatever some Democrat was doing. And now I talk to
you
them
know,
and they're on my side now. And I'm like, ah, look at that. Like,
yeah,
and then for some of them, they're like, you influenced me in my political opinions growing up. And I'm like, okay, I guess I did, but
yes, yes. No,
it's
no.
so odd.
I've experienced that as well.
Yeah.
I had um I had a group of friends when I was in high school and all throughout middle school, but by the time we got to high school, I was very, very political. And about end of sophomore, beginning of junior year, they like ostracized me. Like, we would always sit in class by each other, and then one day they walked into class and they sat on the other side of the room, and they wouldn't let me sit with them at lunch, and like I just
Oh
got abandoned
wow.
because of my politics. But like flash forward 10 years in the future, and I've got them saying, we should have student debt forgiveness and Medicare for all, and they've suddenly done this, like they've changed, and I've
Hmm.
watched that happen over time, and you know I think you're right. Like, I think we had a larger impact maybe on people than we realized at the time,
Oh,
because
definitely.
we were the only ones saying things that they'd never heard before. You
Hmm.
know, they'd never heard those arguments. They got their education from their parents. And, of course, there's going to be pushback when you're young and you're first being challenged by somebody.
Hmm.
But I'd like to think we plant seeds in people's minds.
Oh
And
yeah.
it might take a while, but, people do change, especially from like middle school and high school I'm to that part of your life where you're like, I think I'm ready to have children of my own.
Hmm.
That's a huge gap of time. So I think the struggle is definitely not over, and I think it's getting better all the time. Um, but we definitely saw a backlash with Trump. We definitely saw a backlash with Obama, um, with how we lost the Senate and the Congress
Hmm.
after second at his first 2 years. We've definitely seen that, but I think there's a reason to be hopeful for the future. Um, and I think that we've just got to keep going. You know, um, I've also been told that I am the reason some of these people became liberals or leftists. And
Hmm.
it's super flattering. But I mean, I don't know if they would have become that if they
Hmm.
hadn't heard me. And
Yeah,
you
like I've even had friends tell me that they weren't politically like involved or even interested in politics until they heard me start talking about politics, and they were like, "Oh, okay, well, maybe I should start paying attention."
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, politics, if we're not talking about it, I mean, I know that that's pretty much all I've got on my Twitter timeline. But I think that that actually influences people, especially young people who are apathetic. Um, I mean, we're really, really progressive as a population, Gen Z and millennials, and half of Gen X at least. It's hit or miss with them. But
Yeah.
you know, if we all voted, there's nothing that could stop us. Like, we outnumber the boomers,
Oh yeah.
and
They're
if we
dying off
just vote,
finally.
huh?
I said they're dying off finally.
Yeah,
Kind
I
kind of.
I
I
mean,
mean, they have the best health care out of all of us,
yeah,
so
that's
it's
the
gonna be a
thing.
long time before they're all gone. But
And
yeah.
this point that I think that never gets brought up enough, but like, we talk about how the boomers are so terrible and conservative, but has anyone ever considered that the boomers that didn't sell out to corporate interests died early and young? Like, the
Yeah.
good ones are already, in situations where they're dead or they're gone.
Hmm.
So I think we act like there's this monolith, but like, they couldn't all have been bad. A lot of them were hippies. What happened
Yeah,
to those?
see, that's what I always say because I'm like most of the baby boomers were like hippies. At least that's what that's what history tells us. Like, what the hell happened to them?
They died.
Yeah.
They died because they didn't have health care. Like,
Yeah.
my mom was a boomer. She was a young boomer, but she was a boomer. She
Hmm.
died because she didn't have health care. She was very leftist. Like, she
Yeah.
was a leftist.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, that's,
Like my parents are baby boomers. They're still alive, thank
yeah,
God.
great.
But yeah, but they're well to the left. Like anyone who's had like the people who have had the most effect on my political beliefs would definitely be my parents. And
Right.
they're baby boomers. They were too young to be hippies though, because they were like
Yeah.
teenagers in the 70s when all that stuff was happening. But yeah, but
This is just
definitely.
so
And then
sad.
someone I used to watch, me and my mom, we used to watch the news together whenever I was in middle school and high school. Tom Hartman, the Tom Hartman program comes on Free Speech TV. I used to watch him all the time. He's a baby boomer. He's one of the smartest people on the left. And him, I usually say, he taught me everything I know about history and politics. Because there's not one thing that I knew before I graduated high school that wasn't anything he had said. And, he's,
Yeah.
smart. Yeah.
I was raised by my grandparents, for the most part, and they were the silent generation. I think Grandpa might have been the tail end of the greatest. He was old enough to go to World War II,
Oh, okay.
um, he was, you know, he was over 18 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they were very much FDR Democrats.
Yep.
Socially, I'm not going to lie, they were very conservative
Yeah.
socially, but in like a hands-off way,
Mm-hmm.
like, that's not my business. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want you to be a bisexual or a gay person, but like, also, I don't think that the government should be locking them up. Um,
Yeah.
you know, like
Yeah.
they were for their time. My grandpa once told me, and I called him out. I was like 12 or 13. He once told me, um, well, I worked with this black man at Boeing. And once I called him, uh, the, I guess back then it was, just so you know, I'm going to use the word, if that's
Yeah.
okay. Is that okay?
Yeah,
A
you're good.
Negro. Called
Yeah.
him a Negro, and he was like, and then I immediately, it was just something that had been drilled into me, like that's what we called them, and then I was like, wait a minute, oh no, what if I've offended him? And so I apologized to him, and and he said, oh Glenn, I know you're one of the good ones, and I was like, Grandpa, do you realize how sarcastic he was probably being? Like talking through his teeth, like, oh yeah, you're one of the good ones, Grandpa.
Oh,
You're one of
wow.
the good ones. You know how they always say that about,
Yeah.
yeah, you're black. You know what that means. You're one of the good ones. Well,
Yes.
I like how that guy turned it around on my grandpa. Let me just say, no, Glenn, I know you're one of the good ones. You're not. I, but yeah, like even then, like it, they weren't perfect socially, obviously, but
Yeah.
they were also trying
Mm-hmm.
in a way that really helped me, I think, grow, past where they were, and like see things even clearer than them, because you can't do. I hate the argument that they were products of their time, but they were products of their
Products of their
time.
time. Yeah.
It's like, but they were still, I think, better. I think I'm happier that I was raised by the silent gen and the greatest gen than by the boomer gen. Just because they experienced all that poverty. They
Yeah.
experienced the war. My
Mm-hmm.
grandfather was like very adamant that World War II was the only war that had ever been worth fighting. And that, we needed to take care of the poor and the sick and the hungry and the ill. Um, like he was very much an FDR Democrat, and I like that. I think that, FDR had some problems, obviously. I mean, shit.
Yeah.
We didn't call them concentration camps, but they were concentration camps. We called them internment camps. A
Yeah.
friendly name. People still died there,
Oh, yeah.
but
Yeah.
not like we didn't kill them. Kill them. We just let them starve, or like,
Yeah.
you know, accidents happen. You know.
Mm-hmm.
But like, FDR on economic stuff was amazing, and I think Bernie is the modern FDR with that upgrade
A lot of
regarding
upgrades. Yeah,
with like
he's well to the left of FDR in a lot of ways.
yeah.
Yeah, not just
Um,
socially but economically as well.
right, right. Well, FDR did try to get something like a Medicare for all system passed,
He
and it didn't work out.
Yeah, he had the whole second Bill of Rights thing.
Right, right. Yeah, so I think that Bernie is probably a lot more leftist than FDR was. But like, I think that he's a member of the silent generation too. Like, everyone says he's a boomer, but I'm like,
no, he's
no,
not.
no. He was born at the tail end of the Great Depression and right before the war like started. Like
Yeah.
So he wasn't he his formative years were in poverty, and that affects you. That
Yeah.
impacts you in a lot of ways. He escaped that poverty and fought for civil rights and social justice. He's also a minority, which a lot of people overlook.
I know right? He's Jewish. Yeah.
I know that he's physically white, but that doesn't matter to white supremacists. Like, they don't give a damn how white Jewish people are. He's obviously experienced some discrimination. And I mean, I think that in the media, particularly, they play those undertones all the time.
Oh, yes.
There was that article where he had like 3 houses, one on both
Politico.
Yeah, Politico did some real anti-Semitic shit. Like, another thing, just side note, and Semitic doesn't just apply to Jewish people, it also applies to Palestinian people, because Semitic is not a religion, it is a ethnicity. It is a region. So like they say like you're anti-Semitic if you don't support Israel. Well, you're also anti-Semitic if you don't support
Palestine. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But people don't know what words are sometimes. Like, no one ever defines them for them. They just
or they define them poorly, then people get the wrong idea of what they mean.
Right. You use the context where they're used. Like, you only hear about anti-Semitism in the anti-Jewish context, and that's all you're going to think about.
Yeah.
But, I mean, when it comes to Palestine, especially the fact that he recognizes that Palestinian people are people and deserve human rights and security as well as Israeli people, like, that's huge to me. That's to me. Like, I remember reading about it when I was 14, and ever since I've been like, because I was always horrified by the Holocaust, always horrified by it, and I didn't understand how anybody could do that. And then I found out how they treated Palestinians, and I was just like, do you guys not see the similarities here? Do you not see this is objectively wrong? Did you not learn a lesson from what happened to you? Like, and I feel like a lot of abused people end up becoming abusers later on.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because they felt like their whole existence was threatened. But that doesn't really justify it,
No.
Because Germany could argue they felt their existence was threatened by Jewish people, and that's not the case. That wasn't the case at all. But yeah, I think we've gotten a little bit in the weeds, but I think we've I don't know. I really just think we need to change this country from the bottom up, and change only really comes from the bottom up. People act like the top and those in power can do it, but like look at Puerto Rico
Yeah.
right now. 500K to 1 million people came out and protested for 16 days.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long protest.
Yeah.
They shut down roads, highways, businesses, the economy basically ground to a halt. And look at what happened there. We had the governor resign. Like
Yeah.
that,
Finally.
yeah, that comes from the bottom up. That comes from when people are so angry and so pissed off that they're going to, you know, lose income, go without food, housing, etc., comforts in
Mhm.
order to join together and sustain a movement like that. And even if we get Bernie as president, I think we need to be aware that we're going to need that kind of sustained mass movement. Even
That's when the real fight's gonna happen. That's when we're
yeah,
gonna
that's
yeah.
because the ACA, nobody came out into the streets to protest the fact it wasn't single payer like Barack Obama promised us.
Hmm.
Um, and I think we're going to need that. We can't keep electing Democrats and then just going, well, our job is done. They're going to take care of it all, and we don't have to worry about anything. We don't have to hold them accountable. We can trust them.
We can
No,
go to brunch finally.
go
Yeah.
to brunch, have mimosas, and forget about all of this. They'll take care of it. No, no. This time we need to be on their ass. This
Yeah.
time we need to be paying attention, even if it's Bernie, because I mean, Bernie is the president. People don't realize the president can't do all this shit
Yeah.
alone. Like, electing him sends a really strong message to the Democratic Party that they need to vote how he wants to vote. But
Hmm.
yeah, they have to worry about their own reelections. And if they're convinced, or if they think for even 1 second voting for Medicare for all will jeopardize their chance of getting reelected, they will not vote for it.
Yeah.
So we've got to keep on their ass.
Hmm.
Direct action is always more powerful than anything else.
Yep.
But yeah, we oh wow, yeah, we've been on here for an hour and a half. You think that's enough for a good podcast?
Yeah, I think so.
Like, how long do these things usually go?
I don't know. This is the first time I've ever talked this long on here. Usually, I think my longest video on YouTube is probably like 20 something minutes. So,
Well, we were
yeah.
supposed to talk about Tom Cotton, but then you get me talking about politics, and I'll go on forever. I don't stop.
Well, it's been good. You know.
um, I would love to do this again. Definitely going to love seeing this once it's all put together. I don't know. Do you do this like you don't do this live, right? Do you edit?
No, 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 no. I'll probably edit around the edges a little bit, but yeah. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing the final product. I appreciate you having me on.
All right. Thanks for coming on.
Definitely tweet it. Since I have all those followers, hopefully I can get a few to follow you.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Hey.
Bye.